September 1, 2020, Dictionary.com announced that it added 650 new words to its database and made changes to over 15,000 current entries related to race, gender, and mental health in its biggest update ever. Among these terms were Filipina, Pinoy, Pinay, and most notably Filipinx and Pinxy, which have caused much debate in the Philippine social networking sphere around the world. The goal of this video is to simply hear both sides of those for and against the use of the terms Filipinx and Pinxy, and was made from a neutral standpoint with no political intentions to rewrite, negate, or invalidate the beliefs and opinions of those who are either for or against the use of the terms mentioned. Casting for this video was executed through a social media listening on Facebook groups and Twitter hashtags regarding the issue. Among the many people we messaged around the world, those featured are those that have agreed to take part of the video on time and were not selected through personal connections or close friends of the Else Planet team. The thoughts, views, and opinions that will be shared by those featured do not reflect those of this channel, the people of the Philippines, and the diaspora as a whole, but will be based on their personal knowledge and understanding of the said issue. We encourage everyone to share their own points of view in the comment section below for a healthy discussion. Viewer discretion is strongly advised.
Hi, my name is Danny, and I am currently a student in the University of the Philippines, Diliman. I was born and raised here in the Philippines, in Metro Manila, and I am a bisexual woman.
Hi, my name is Isabel. I'm a theater major. I'm Ilonggo, but I currently live in California.
My name is Junichi Takeda. I'm a recruiter and researcher for a recruiting company in Japan. Grew up in the Philippines, finished psychology, even started working in the Philippines for like a year and a half. Now I'm in Japan for almost 3 to 4 years. I identify myself as a heterosexual male, so I'm straight.
Hi, I'm Kale. I'm studying political science. I have been living in the Philippines for all of my life. I was born in Manila and raised in Quezon City, and I'm non-binary.
I'm Rachel Gomez. I'm from the Philippines, and I lived in Metro Manila for the last 2 decades, and I do research at a food supplement, manufacturing, and research company. I also used to host and direct different radio programs across the country. I also participate in Model United Nations as delegate, or usually nowadays, chair around the world.
Hi, my name is Faye. I'm an artist. I'm from Binyan, Laguna. I was actually born in Lipa City, Batangas. I currently live in Cebu City, and I've been here for like almost 4 years. And I'm non-binary.
What is the term Filipinx, and how did you learn about it?
Filipinx, from my understanding, was a term coined by members of the Filipino diaspora, so people from different countries but are Filipino or are of the Filipino community who felt the need to introduce a new term that was more gender neutral and more separated from the colonial identity of a Filipino. In a way, it was a way for them to decolonize themselves from the colonizers and oppressors of the country. I first encountered the term Filipinx a few years back in a thread in Reddit, I think, and a few posts, and I didn't really think much of it until it was brought up again by one of my high school friends who had just recently moved to New York. That was when I really tried learning about the movement, what it stood for, and why it was brought about.
For me, I heard about the term Filipinx from being online in different LGBT and Filipino circles. My understanding of the term is that it's a gender-neutral version of Filipino, Filipina.
I saw this term probably a year ago. I'm not sure. It was kind of way back. When I first saw the term, it didn't really bother me. I thought it was gonna go away. I thought it was like a new cool term used by Filipinos or Filipino Americans residing in the United States. To me at first it was okay.
Words Filipinx and Pinxy are gender-inclusive alternatives to the words Filipino and Pinoy respectively. I first discovered these words from Twitter.
Well, according to the widely publicized Dictionary.com, the Filipinx, or as they call it, Filipinx, is a native or inhabitant of the Philippines, which is used in place with a masculine and feminine form of Filipino and Filipina. Most Filipinos had no idea about this at all. Note, we do not even use the letter X in our alphabet. It is only used for foreign words. Most Filipinos would find Filipinx a foreign pronunciation.
Filipinx is an attempt by the diaspora to give a gender-neutral label to themselves. They modeled it after the movement to use Latinx in queer online spaces. I've actually learned about the term about 7 or 8 years ago in a website called Tumblr. Some people back then, diaspora or not, actually have been identifying with the term. So I think medyo matagal na siya. And this isn't the first time that it actually surfaced, but it didn't cause as much uproar.
The terms Filipinx and Pinxy were among the new terms added to dictionary.com earlier this month, thus sparking an online debate on their usage. What are your thoughts on these new terms?
The use of Filipinx is not only culturally inappropriate, it's also politically incorrect. If you're gonna identify that as a national and cultural identity in our 1987 Philippine Constitution, it literally starts with Kami ang nakapangyayaring sambayanang Pilipino, which means we, the sovereign Filipino people. It's not only referring to Filipino males, it's for everyone. It's for non-binary, it's for people who are straight, it's for people who are bi, trans. I just really don't see the problem with Filipino. The word Filipina, it was brought about by a feminist movement, but the feminist movement was not at all to combat anything about cultural identity or the fact that women weren't included as Filipinos because of the O or because it was masculine. No, it came from combating patriarchal practices in making political decisions and being a part of the workforce in the 20th century. There's a huge difference between the Filipinx movement and the Latinx movement. Filipino, it doesn't only refer to an ethnicity or an ethnic group, it also refers to an actual national identity, your citizenship to a sovereign nation that is the Philippines. Filipino was a term used to describe full-blooded Spaniards who were born in the Philippines. Natives were then called Indios. We started calling ourselves Filipinos when Rizal, Andres Bonifacio, Katipunan fought for our independence and our freedom. They called themselves Filipinos and they owned the term. They got it for themselves and they shifted the whole entire thing to show we do have power and we're just as good as the Spanish. And that is what our ancestors fought for, to be recognized as Filipino and to finally have independence and freedom.
About Filipinx and Pinxy, I have a lot of stuff to say about these words. Basically, the backlash, I think, is more of a result of confusion. We should realize that the letter X isn't really utilized in our language. It is a borrowed letter. And it's really usually used for surnames, and other than that, it's not really used. So when Filipinos hear Filipinx or Pinxy, it's really jarring for them to hear to say, we are skipping steps towards gender equality here. I'm not saying that having a term that you feel comfortable with is not important, but we also need to recognize that there are issues that we need to solve that will make it easier for us to live with our identities, to live as authentically as possible. We still do not have a law in the Philippines that protects people from discrimination because of their sexual orientation, their gender identity, and expression. I think when we solve these issues, it's really just easier for us to assert our identity and to create new words for us to feel comfortable with. It's not that it isn't important, as I said earlier, but I think that the backlash towards us is very justified and backed by a lot of deep-seated issues that we need to root out. Patriarchy and imperialism that really caused our society to become this cis heterosexist mess.
At first, when it came out, when I heard about it, was okay, no problems. Maybe it's a Filipino American thing. But as soon as I heard or I've read that it was placed in a dictionary, that raised my alarm. To be honest, me as a local born Filipino, even though I'm half Japanese, I kind of feel offended because probably everyone is basically as much as Filipino as everyone else is, regardless of whatever part of the globe you are. But from a local point of view, it's disrespectful. And it's also disrespecting the language. If Filipino as a word was a very big issue, it would have caused an uproar in the Philippines already, especially in the Filipino education system. Probably the LGBT community, some members are actually supportive of it. It's good that you're trying to initiate change, but then again, is it necessary? And to be honest, it's not broken. Filipino itself is not a broken word. It's not a discriminatory word. There's nothing wrong with it. So don't try to fix what isn't broken and try to focus, I guess, more on the issues that actually do matter.
As for the term Filipinx and Pinay with an X, I never quite figured out how to say that. I understand its function, and I'm not going to tell any other genderqueer Filipinos that they can't use it, but it is linguistically a little difficult. I think the better answer would have been Filipine and Pinay, because that's pronounceable in the language.
I used to include the Filipinx in the live and let live category in society. If they won't bother Filipinos from the Philippines and the other diaspora Filipinos around the world, then it would be fine. However, things complicated that. The Filipinx are foreigners of Filipino descent who want to make their own unique identity just so that they happen to have something special wherever they are. On the other hand, they happen to be cultural imperialists in the way that they force the term upon others, particularly the Filipinos who want nothing to do with the term Filipinx. In the end, they ironically try to gatekeep what is a true Filipino. Filipinx is a sign of white liberalism because people from America, even if they are descended from Filipinos, made this term to fix yet another Filipino problem. Their claims that it will decolonize the word Filipino, which has already been assimilated and used by our society for over the past century beyond whatever history or historical use it has been in the past. It is also difficult to gatekeep our own culture because a lot of Filipino culture is borrowed culture, whether it is from the Chinese, European, Indian, Malay, and all these other countries that have planted their influence in our culture. I also see other Filipinx using that former colonized name, the Philippine Islands, the term PI. So not only are they promoting colonial history and history of oppression by calling it the Philippine Islands and not even acknowledging the fact that it is an independent country, they're literally insulting other Filipinos because PI is short for another insult nowadays.
First of all, I'd just like to say that Philstar's caption on the post is incendiary and implies the terms would be used for a catch-all to anyone with Filipino descent wherever they might be living. Second, like I said earlier, Filipinx is something that really isn't new. I think that these labels popping up and people choosing to identify with it is an unavoidable phenomenon as cultures and languages are always evolving and that we are always learning more about ourselves. I myself was hostile of the usage of Filipinx around early this year and back in the day in Tumblr. I kept on mistaking it as a diaspora, trying to steer the attention away from our own struggles here of internalized colonization. What I didn't see before was that the diaspora wasn't asking us who live here to recognize them as a special type of Filipino. They were asking to be seen as their own, as people with Filipino descent who grew up in an entirely different reality, entirely different cultures. As for the claims that the label Filipino is a gender-neutral term and language, I'd like everyone to think again about how many cultures, languages, and writing systems exist in the archipelago. Not all of them fit into what people initially think as quintessentially Filipino. Manuel L. Quezon's attempt to homogenize the identity and the language has created a dangerous illusion of a monolithic Filipino that no one can ever measure up to. National identity isn't based on a checklist of food you need to eat or places you visited, and it sure as hell isn't based on some website. When we come to terms with the context of that, we will understand why the term Filipino doesn't sit well with those in the diaspora who choose to find their own label.
Do you think that the people should start using these terms? Why or why not?
I don't think people should use it. I feel like all of this just started because of miseducation, misinformation, and heaps of misunderstandings. I think it's important for Filipinos, even people in the homeland, and members of Filipino diaspora should really learn the culture. If they brought forth this term because they felt alienated or because they felt a divide between homelanders and their cultural identity and the Philippines and them, I feel like they could just learn more about the culture and the language and really understand what the roots of Filipino is and what it means to be Filipino and why Filipino is such a great word to identify as. If they really learn more about it, they will realize that Filipino is not broken. There is no need for Filipinx. My heart really goes out to people who don't feel like they belong, but I just really don't see the need for it. I don't think people should use it. If you already identify with it and if you have have heard all sides, all the history, and you still feel like Filipinx is what you identify as, I say identify with care. Just try your best not to misinform people about the Filipino language, the Filipino culture, and the history.
I think that the idea of having a gender neutral version of those terms is an important thing to have, but I do understand the linguistic concerns. So I really think that it would be more useful to the community as a whole to find a more pronounceable version of these alternatives, but to also understand that what we have for the moment is using the X, and that it would be courteous to genderqueer people who do have a strong attachment to it. I don't, but many do, to just use it out of courtesy because it's not hurting you.
I'm not for Filipinx. Filipino itself is perfect the way it is. Using Filipinx, they say, yeah, Filipino came from colonialism, but you're trying to replace it with another colonialist mindset, like kind of Filipino-American, more American mindset. Again, it's just an opinion. I'm not trying to offend, but that's how I look at it from a local point of view, and I'm half, so I'm also a diaspora. Everyone goes through a lot. Yes, I get confusions and stuff about identity, whether you're Filipino or American or Japanese or whatnot, wherever you're from, but always learn to enjoy the best culture of both. You don't have to celebrate the negative part. You have that privilege. I think diasporas who are actually having it way better should be held to a higher degree, because we get to experience both, and we have that gift to actually spread to other people. That's what I think.
Personally, I am in support of people who want to identify as Filipinx. It's their choice, just as my choice as a non-binary person to be called as a Filipino. And I recognize that other non-binary people do not really want to be identified as Filipino because it sounds too masculine for them. Maybe because they were born in a different culture where words ending in O are masculine and words ending in A are feminine. The thing is, I am not the gatekeeper of Filipino language and culture, and nobody is. You're free to do whatever you want. If you're comfortable with being called Filipinx, then that's fine. If you really want to be called Filipino, then that's fine too. So we just really have to be understanding of each other.
Do I think people should start using this term? Oh, I'm definitely against making this mainstream because it is an American solution for what is generally a non-existent problem in the Philippines. Sure, there are non-binary people, there are trans people in the Philippines. However, more often than not, aside from those Western educated ones, they just generally want to be accepted or not persecuted, not insulted, and the like. Shoving another term which further divides them would just be counteractive or counterproductive to whatever we want in the Philippines. It just causes this kind of discord which Filipinos don't even want to begin with. If it is somehow enforced, as what many of those Phil foreigners wish it would be another victory for the Western cultural imperialism, which is ironically something that they claim to advocate against. So in the end, yes, I am firmly against the use of the term Filipinx or Filipinx as they say it.
If you think that it suits you, go ahead and use it. If not, feel free to not use it. The only thing that needs to be kept in mind is to respect how people label themselves and don't impose. Identity is a very important thing, and you don't really want to be the one that denies it from anyone. You don't want to be that guy.